Grüezi miteinander, ganz herzlich willkommen und einen wunderschönen guten Tag, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Freunde. Ich begrüße Sie zu dieser Sondersendung von Weltwoche Daily, die andere Sicht, unabhängig, kritisch, gut gelaunt hier aus dem Institut für fortgeschrittene Gegenwartskunde. Ich bin verbunden mit Russland, ich bin verbunden mit Moskau, ich bin verbunden mit Fyodor Lukyanow, dem Publizisten, Hochschuldozenten und Direktor des Waldai Diskussionsclubs. Er ist ein bestens vertrauter Gast in unserer Sendung, auch als Autor schon in der Weltwoche präsent gewesen. Und ganz wichtig, gerade in der heutigen Zeit, in dieser aufgewühlten, interessanten Zeit, eben unterschiedliche Sichtweisen einzufangen, auch und gerade die russische, die bei uns ja im Moment aus bekannten Gründen nicht sehr prominent vertreten ist. Aber eben als neutraler Schweizer habe ich die Möglichkeit, hier eben tatsächlich über alle Brandmauern hinweg zu diskutieren. Ich wechsle jetzt auf Englisch, damit die Konversation funktioniert. Hi Fyodor, great to have you here in the program. How is it at the moment in Moscow? What's the mood in Russia in these interesting times?
Hi, Roger. Thank you for this invitation. The mood in Moscow is, as before. Nothing, basically nothing new. So Moscow is, I would say, relatively calm and follows with great interest what is happening because each news is connected with Mr. Trump. Sometimes it's even boring already, but we expect something else to come.
Is the general mood rather optimistic or pessimistic? In the European Union, we will talk about it, it's rather gloomy at the moment. Russia, not in a, I would say, politically very easy situation. You have still this war in Ukraine going on. But is the mood, the general mood, optimistic, pessimistic at the moment?
I wouldn't call it optimistic or pessimistic. It's a pretty stable mood. No big illusions, no big expectations in conjunction with Mr. Trump and his hypothetical peace initiative or whatever he can offer. I think that previous years, including years of Donald Trump's first presidency, taught us to be realistic about what is possible, what is not possible. There are people, of course, here who expect Trump to be willing to engage in something like a big deal with Russia, especially given the fact that just these days we remember Yalta conference exactly 80 years ago. And some people even speculate that probably it's time for a new deal. I don't belong to this group. I don't think that anything like big deal in Yalta style is doable and possible in this world. But I think that, of course, it will be very interesting to listen to proposals or ideas from Mr. Trump's entourage, because certainly he, whether we like it or not, but he is a person who now dictates the political agenda worldwide.
And he definitely is a man with, or a politician, a president with fantasy. We have heard his new proposals concerning Gaza. What do you make of these first days of the Trump presidency, of this whirlwind of initiatives and ideas? Yeah, what's your assessment?
Yeah, that's very, very difficult to assess. I think people in Russia, including political analysts and decision makers, were surprised this morning by this new proposal about Gaza and this luxury resort which should be established there. Yes, I think you said you're absolutely right. The main thing about Trump is a fantasy full person, colorful and fantasyful. And of course, what is very obvious to all of us who follow this development, Trump is willingly or based on his intuition, but he destroys the whole narrative which has been erected in previous years, if not decades. Mm-hmm. It sounds absolutely weird sometimes, like this idea about Gaza. I don't believe it's doable, but who knows? But it's very important that the whole construction which has been created around international affairs, and to large extent a very artificial one, which has been created around international affairs since the end of the Cold War, and to some extent led us to this deadlock today. It is being disrupted completely by Trump. Even his crazy proposals like this one widens the space of the possibilities, and that's interesting.
I mean, from the Russian perspective, to put it very simply, what I've heard, the reproach, the criticism is that the West is hypocritical. They say things, they talk about rules, they don't take seriously. Do you think Donald Trump brings more honesty to international relations? I know there are people who would say Trump is the opposite of honesty, but I think, yeah, does he bring more honesty to international relations?
I think absolutely, no doubt about that. He brings a lot of honesty. I would even argue a little bit too much of honesty, because hypocrisy is sometimes a useful part for international relations, but it's not it's not Trump's virtue. He is really very blunt person, right to the point. And of course, we cannot ignore the fact that Trump's methodology is not a political one. This is a very much business-driven one. And in this particular case with Gaza, he was as honest as possible. He spoke as a developer. He spoke as a real estate baron, mogul, who just considers this very difficult political problem through the lenses of business possibilities.
Of Mar-a-Lago and Silicon Valley.
Exactly. And development, the business of developers is a very special one, as we know, everywhere, be it Russia, US, or Switzerland. Mm-hmm. So it's, of course, very special to hear something like this. And again, I don't believe it's doable in this particular case. But again, he destroys cliches which prevented us from thinking out of the box. And probably it will bring something, not only in the Middle East, but in the Ukrainian case as well.
You know the Russian President Vladimir Putin personally. You have interviewed him. I guess you have met him several times. If you would compare these two alpha politicians, these two presidents, in terms of temperament, in terms of personality, how would you assess this? Putin versus Trump?
Totally different. They are two poles of this temperament in this temperament scale. Putin is calm. Putin is patient. That's very important. Trump is extremely impatient. Putin is very patient. Putin is, it might sound strange to our audience in Europe, but Putin is very much legally driven person. He underlines all the time that he is a lawyer by training, by education, and that's true. His initial education is a faculty of law in the St. Peter Leningrad University, and for him it's very important to find a legal base for anything he and Russia are doing, which is exactly the opposite to Trumpian approach. At the same time, what they have in common, and that's exactly what we discussed minutes ago, Putin hates hypocrisy. Putin really cannot stand the traditional European way to do business without saying anything which is true, which is really how it is in reality. And that's why I guess that's why a relationship with the European Union has been derailed completely in previous years. So in this regard, Trump's honesty, which we discussed, might be useful and might be good. At the same time, the problem might be, and I remember that those who participated in Putin-Trump negotiations during his first term, this question about going into details of problems, which is extremely important for Putin, be it historically, legally, economically. That's exactly the opposition to Trump, who cannot concentrate on things longer than 10 minutes. And that might be a real problem for future negotiations.
What does Putin think about Trump?
I don't know, of course. I would guess that he likes Trump. He likes Trump as a very, how to say it, a person who is very much alive, with all dimensions of a colorful and energetic human being, which is again not the case in other situations with other politicians from the West. And I think that he hopes that Trump might feel some things, maybe not understand, not so to say intellectually grasp, but feel some things with his intuition that might be very important for settlement, be it Ukraine, be it Middle East or whatever. But on the other hand, in Trumpian world, money makes core. I'm afraid that in our case, it's slightly more sophisticated, nuanced.
Mm-hmm. What would you say, just a very quick additional question, what would you say is the most important value, the most important point of reference for Putin? When it's for Trump, it's money. What is it for Putin?
I think for Putin, and this is again a little bit problematic just in case of Trump, of communication with Trump, history, culture, and identity, historical identity, things which occupy Putin's mind mostly now, be it about particular case with Ukraine or be it in general the situation with the future of Russian Federation, Russia as a continuation of previous incarnations, Russian Empire, Soviet Union, and so. It has nothing to do with revanchism. It has to do with an attempt to understand what kind of country we want to be in the future, because we understand, and Putin is not an exception, that the future will bring enormous changes for all. And it's very important to change with time, but to keep some integrity and identity. And this is a complicated thing. That's why I'm a bit concerned whether Trump will be able to even understand what kind of concerns Putin has.
How close are these two presidents as far as an agreement in Ukraine is concerned?
I have no idea because if we listen to Trump, there are negotiations ongoing very actively and very successful, as he says. Being here, I heard many times from many Russian counterparts, including officials, that there are no negotiations at all yet, nothing. I can imagine that Mr. Trump, so to say, he fantasizes and then he creates new reality out of that. So I don't think that we can speak about closeness to any kind of solution yet. And of course, we can start to think about this the day when they start to communicate directly, be it on a phone call or something else. And then we will see.
Again, what is the most important, very short answer, what is the most important issue for Putin in this negotiation? What does he want to have 100%? What's the core of his demands in a negotiation?
Core of his demands is about security. It's not about territorial gains or anything like that. It's about Russian security vis-a-vis NATO, vis-a-vis transatlantic community, Europe, and Ukraine is key to that. So the question about territories, unfortunately, now is another problem, which was not the case 22 when the conflict started, the military conflict was launched. Now it is because Ukraine declined to negotiate at that point. But again, the key issue is about general arrangements, security arrangements in Eastern Europe for years to come. And Putin says all the time that we don't need ceasefire, we need a stable peace, and then we need to address the key issue.
Will he ever accept the compromise as far as NATO membership is concerned? I've heard the Americans want to have a 20-year pause for NATO membership for Ukraine, whereas the Russians could insist on having eternal neutrality. Is that a breaking point of this, or is this room for compromise, this issue?
I'm afraid this is no room for compromise when it comes to NATO membership, for a reason which, from my point of view, is not exactly correct, but it is the case here. NATO is a symbolic thing. NATO enlargement manifests a Russian retreat, profound retreat after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And when you talk about the pause, 20 years pause, unfortunately, it will not work. That certainly will not work for one reason. We had this pause already. 2008 in Bucharest at the NATO summit, when it was a very fierce exchange between Europeans and Americans, and George W. Bush wanted a membership action plan for Ukraine, and then Germans and French insisted and achieved this pause, actually. They stated that Ukraine will be a member of NATO, but some other day. And that was de facto what is being proposed now. The result of this pause, we know. The NATO question came earlier than 20 years after. So this time it will not function.
Mm-hmm. Germany, we have election time. Your observation? What's the most striking thing in your eyes happening in Germany at the moment?
First of all, it's not my business to discuss German politics. You know, we Russians are known for interventions in any elections everywhere. So I don't want to be accused. To be frank, I'm not surprised by what is happening there as an observer, just looking from the outside. I think trends are very clear. From my point of view, the government after this election, whoever will compose it, probably CDU, probably Social Democrats, I don't know who exactly, but that will be the last government in Germany without alternative for Germany, for Deutschland. because looking at the dynamics of this party, I don't believe that the next election, which might be earlier than expected again, will create a result which would allow to form a government without this party. That's my guess. Probably I'm totally wrong. I'm not there. But in a way, we see the trend in many places in Europe, which is absolutely clear. And why should Germany be an exception?
A shift to the right in many countries in the European Union, also in Germany. What does that mean for the Russian-German and Russian-EU relationship? Has this any significance?
Less than many people believe. First of all, I don't know what kind of European Union we will see in case major powers will be run by right-wing or very right-wing governments. I don't know, because we have Italian example where basically nothing changed after the right-wing party formed the government. We had example in Austria when Freiheitspartei was part of coalition, not once. So it didn't mean, at that time it was not such a big problem with Russia, but it didn't mean any significant change. So I guess that the interconnection inside the European Union and the interdependence is too big to allow any party, whatever they state before the election, to cut it abruptly and to change. So in this regard, we will see. But in general, of course, I think European Union is part of the general trend in the world, which is towards more self-sufficiency and more egoism. And how it will be displayed inside the European Union, I don't know, but the European Union is a very special creature which can suffer a lot if this atmosphere will arise. As for the Russian-European relationship, I think we discussed it with you, Roger, already a couple of times. Basically, I'm absolutely convinced that the current situation is totally abnormal. This cut, this gap, this discrepancy between Russia and Europe is against anybody's interests. And sooner or later, this gap will be bridged by common interests. But unfortunately, rather later than sooner.
How long will it take, or will it ever take place, that Russia, Germany, and the European Union have relationship which is comparable to what we had before the Ukraine war? How long will this take? What do you think?
I don't believe that we ever will have a relationship comparable to what we had before. That era is over for many, many reasons. It's not because of Russia, in particularly, or European Union or anybody. Everything changed. That relationship was product of the absolutely unique political moment after the Cold War. This will never come back. As far as normal workable relationship is concerned, I would not dare to guess which time it will take, but I would humbly suggest that next decade probably will be different than this one.
One very last short question. What do you think will happen with the Nord Stream pipelines? I mean, they are now shut down, they are destroyed, not totally destroyed. What will happen there? Do you have any kind of information?
I have no information, and I don't believe that anybody has any information because no one knows. There is not, no one has any plans. Speculations that Americans, for example, can can take it over, to buy it, and to use them in their interest. With Donald Trump, I wouldn't exclude anything. And of course, in his case, since he believes that profit is the single notion which matters, why not? But I don't believe that Russia will be extremely happy to make such deals. At the end of the day, again, I hope that our rapprochement will be earlier than the Nord Stream infrastructure will be totally destroyed by inaction. Mm-hmm. So, and then probably we will be able to resume, maybe on some different kind of conditions, but resume energy cooperation.
Fyodor, many thanks for this conversation and best regards to you. And I'm looking forward to our next discussion. So many things are happening so fast. It's very hard to get along and to make sense of it. Thanks a lot, and have a good evening. I guess it's evening in Moscow when we are recording this interview.
Cheers.